Hi, this is Maria Puga. I am the Title III English Learner Program Coordinator. And in this presentation, we'll be looking over the Title III monitoring indicators and what documentation you'll need as you go through the federal program's monitoring process this school year. First off, we want to say thank you for taking the time to listen to this presentation. And we'd really like to talk about federal programs monitoring, especially in the Title III program, as an opportunity for reflection. So we're looking at you having the opportunity to show us the strengths and the things you are proud of in your programming. We know that districts are doing some amazing work, and this is a good opportunity to reflect and show some of that work that you've been doing at the district and school level. And also we take this federal programming time monitoring to look at areas for improvement. So where there's some spaces where we can continue to improve our Title III English learner programs at your district and school levels. There are four main areas that we look at when we do Title III monitoring. So we'll look at record keeping procedures, those procedures that have to do with identification, screening, assessing, and exiting students. Then we'll look at your core instructional programming. We'll look at family and community engagement. And finally, fiscal accountability and anything that has to do with the financial aspect. So in this presentation, I will be reviewing the indicators and what type of documentation you will need for that. And at the very end, I'll give you my contact information, and I'm happy to meet with you one-on-one if you have additional questions after reviewing this presentation. So the first section that you'll see the Title III programming come up is the student identification, or SID. This information is looking at how you are identifying students and if you're keeping records correctly for that. SID 4 applies to all districts and charter schools, regardless of if you have 1 EL student, 0 to 2,500 EL students. All LEAs accurately identify all potential English learners using the statewide home language survey for all newly enrolled students. So for this particular indicator, what you are going to need is a current state-approved home language survey in all student cumulative files. So not just English learners, but all students should have a home language survey. And what you're going to do is go ahead and upload a redacted form. And if we are on site, we will do a file review. If it's a virtual or hybrid type of review, we will be looking at your files that you upload for that. And you'll also want to have someone at your LEA that is is assigned the ELMS editor role. So we will go into ELMS and look to ensure that there's an editor role. And this will also pop up in your CFSGA because we ask to see that. You can ensure that you have someone in that ELMS editor role by going to your IC administration tool user role. So your IC director can ensure that someone is in that role. In terms of when you're putting indicators into our file upload, you'll want to, you can take a screenshot that shows the ELMS editor information and just drop that as a PDF in SID number 4. In SID 5, we look at the citation is the LEA uses the state-approved English language proficiency screener aligned to the EL language proficiency standards. So we're going to be looking at, there's completed screener form documentation and student cumulative files. So it can include former IELTS screeners, WAPT scoring sheets, also currently the Kinder WIDA scoring sheet, and also the WIDA online screener report. So you'll want to show us documentation of that. And remember, we want it to be redacted so you don't have to have student information, but you can at least show us what it looks like. We will prepare on our end. We'll be looking at your WAPTs from the past, or Kinder or the WIDA online screener, and that they've been submitted in ELMS. And then we also want to ensure that you have a certified kindergarten. It says WAPT, but it should be the kindergarten WIDA online screener proctors. So all of them now are online screener proctors on the WIDA AMS. So we will work with the assessment team to ensure that we can see that you have those. If at your district you already have those certifications that print out those certificates that show you did that training, you can go ahead and add that as a PDF to SID number 5. SID number 6 states that the LEA accurately qualifies and places eligible EL students in a language instruction education program within 30 days using the statewide standardized entrance criteria and process. So what's important for us in this particular indicator is that the LEA has a written process and procedures that are accessible to anyone needing information about the LEA's LIEP and services. So for example, the EL program manual that includes a flow chart and the EL roles and responsibilities of all those in the EL program. For example, your EL coordinator, your EL specialists and teachers, your paraprofessionals, your general ed teachers, your administrators. So you want to look at SID 6 and look at what is our district's policies and procedures and where are they written for anyone to look at and review if they had questions. If you use some of the SDE documentation, you'll want to include that in this particular indicator, but it is important that you have a flow chart for those staff members at your district. SID 7 states the LEA accurately exits eligible students from a language instruction education program within the school year they have met the statewide standardized exit criteria and process. So what this means for SID 7 is that all exit forms are in the student cumulative file, and you want to ensure that every student that has exited has this particular document. What you're going to upload for SID 7 is an example of an exit form, and you can redact student information, name and personal identifying information, but you want to make sure that you have a filled out form so we know what it looks like. If we're on site, we will spot check those. But if it's hybrid or desk review, you'll want to make sure that you include 2 to 3 files that show those exit forms. So those are all of the indicators that have to do with student identification. And now we're going to move to the indicators that are called Program Needs Assessment Services and Evaluation, or program. This is where we're going to be reviewing your core instructional language program at your school district. And a lot of the indicators in this section relate to one another, but they're a little bit different. So I'll make sure to go over each one. You'll notice that in some areas you may be able to use the same documentation, but you want to make sure that when you're uploading documents, even if it fits for program 19 and 20, you want to ensure that you put it in for both programs so that I can make sure that I'm reviewing all the pertinent information. So for program 19, the citation says each student identified for the core EL program receives a high quality program of instruction that uses approaches, methodologies, and curricular materials and resources that are based on scientific research and proven effective with English learners. I know it seems a little bit broad to say scientific research and proven effective, but that is what we look at. And if you have additional questions on what that may mean, I'm very happy to meet with you. For this particular indicator, you're going to look for the following supporting documents and resources. So number 1 would be schedules of all EL services provided, detailing specific staff that's providing those services. You'll want to include a description of all your EL or bilingual services provided. For example, course descriptions, curriculum maps, scope and sequences, program manuals, so EL manuals that provide descriptions of the programs that are being offered at your school. You'll also want to include a list of curricular resources and materials used providing this core EL instruction. You want to give us the best overview of what your program looks like overall, especially if we haven't been to your school, you want to be able to describe it to us. If I am on site or if we're reviewing on site, we will also be looking at English learner plans if they're completed in ELMS for your students, and that there's a copy of those ELPs in the cumulative file. We'll also look at your approved state EL plan in the CFSGA And we will be looking for observable evidence of implementation. So if in your CFSGA plan, you're telling me that you have a co-teaching model, then when we're on site, we're going to be looking for that co-teaching model in the classroom. And you should have provided in the upload schedules for your co-teaching teachers and their planning sessions and the description of the co-teaching. And you can do that. You should do that for every single type of program that you're running at your school or district. Program 20 looks at the academic content instruction for English learners, and it is designed and implemented fitting within that effective language instruction education program that assists English learners in meeting the challenging state academic standards. So in this, we're going to be asking for evidence that instruction that has been designed for meeting the needs of ELs, for example, lesson plans detailing EL differentiation and or use of the EL strategies in the classroom. You're going to want to show us as much as possible your instructional lesson plans or scope and sequences, or how you are differentiating EL instruction to provide the language acquisition support that students need. What we will look at on our end is the graduation data for English learners. We use the state report card to see if students if you're meeting the needs of your English learners, and if they are at the same level as your general education population. Program 21, again, looks at the core EL program. And in the main point in this one is we want to indicate or find indicators that English learners are achieving and sustaining parity with students who entered the LEA school system that were already proficient in English. So our EL students at the same level as non-EL students. So we ask you to upload for this section is a sample of current class rosters with letter grades. So when we're looking through the letter grades, we can see if the English learners' progress is comparable to those students that are already proficient in English. And what you'll want to do is in that class roster, you'll highlight any English learners on that class roster. I tell schools that it's important to survey a few areas in your LEA. So you might have 1 or 2 elementary level class rosters, a few in the middle school, and then a few in the high school. And you can make it a mix at the middle and high school of ELA courses, but also science and social studies. We want to see how your EL students are doing overall in all different content. So for this particular indicator, you'd want to add between 5 to 8 class rosters so we can have more data to see if students are achieving at parity. I will also look in ELMS for any long-term ELs in your program. So this is English learners in the program for 5 or more years. So we look at the number and percentage, and then we also look at the accountability data for English learners in the Idaho State Report Card. You can add these by any means. If you're an overachiever, please go ahead and add them into this indicator. But I will also look at them as we're reviewing your documentation. For program 22, we are looking at your CFSGA Title 3A goals in the goal matrix. So the LEA has created a Title 3A plan to increase the English proficiency levels of EL students by providing this core LIEP. And we want to ensure that you're meeting your goals. So we'll look at the goals, and then you want to include any data that shows that you are or not meeting that goal. And if you're not meeting that goal, then we will, in the action plan, look at how we can adjust your goals to make them timely and relevant, and that we are able to ensure that students are meeting those goals. Program 23 looks at coordination of programs. So English learner students that are identified and also qualify for additional special programs, such as Title I or Special Ed, Gifted and Talented, that these students are having coordination of those services between the EL program and any other program they're in. So this is an important indicator, and it's an indicator that has a lot of findings when we do monitoring, because there is that lack of coordination specifically between the EL program and the special ed program. So we do need to have documentation of joint planning sessions between programs. And then we want a list of EL students placed and participating in coordinated services and activities. This should include, but not limited to, special education, gifted and talented, advanced placement courses, Title I services, Title I-C, extracurricular activities. So what you'll want to do is any of those coordination of services documents that show that the students have been receiving services in one or more programs, you will highlight the English learners on the class or activity roster. On site, and we're going to ask you to put this into the document upload as well. I mean, our upload website is there should be a documentation of IEP cumulative files that EL personnel were invited to participate in the EL meetings for those students who also qualified for special education. Program 24 discusses exited students. So the LEA monitors for a minimum of 2 years the progress of students that have exited from the program to ensure that there's a correct classification, and if there's additional support that is needed, you're finding that it is in a timely manner. So for program 24, you're going to submit an LEA monitoring form. The monitoring form should include multiple data sources such as state assessment, grades, teacher feedback, student feedback, parent feedback as well, attendance, anything that helps schools determine if the student is going to need additional support with their language acquisition, even after they have exited the program. Program 27 discusses that the LEA has a process for entering and verifying IC, ELMS, and IDCI data for English learners. So we are going to be looking at that the LEA has a written policy or procedure for timely and effectively entering and verifying data for English learners. So I will look on ELMS to ensure that you have submitted your annual data collection on or before June 30th of the previous year. We'll also look at English learner plans and erroneous identification applications, if it's applicable, and also parental waivers of services that should be submitted into ELMS in a timely manner. We will review most current IC upload for immigrant data accuracy. We'll review ELMS for EL data accuracy. And then we'll want to make sure that you have a personnel assigned to the Title III EL programs coordinator in your IDCI list. Program 26 discusses how a Title III funded district LEA must provide effective professional development for teachers. So what we'll look for in program 26 is any kind of agendas and sign-in sheets for EL specific professional development. And it should include the participant's role. So are they a teacher, para administrator, anyone that's working at the school that's taking this training should have a sign-in sheet, and there should be information on what that particular training is. So for example, if you do a go-to strategies training at your district, you would want to make sure you have the sign-in sheets and any information that shows who attended these trainings as part of a district-wide training opportunity specific to English learners. That's the big thing. The PD needs to be specific to English learners. All right, program 42 is going to be on all qualified EL students being assessed on the English learner proficiency test, and that the test aligns to the state's proficiency standards. So what we're going to be looking for in this particular indicator is that the LEA has a written policy or procedure verifying the number and percentage of ELs tested, and how the EL provides appropriate accommodations for EL students with an active IEP. Should be something like your English learner handbook, and you may be looking at updating that handbook if you don't have this information in there. We'll also be looking for a list of certified access and alternate access proctors with the corresponding WIDA assessment certificates. When we're on site, we'll be looking at that every year's proficiency assessment score reports are placed in the student's file every year. So if a student has been an EL student for 4 years, there should be 4 score reports in their cumulative file. If you have a remote or hybrid visit, you will want to make a copy of that student's file and make sure that it includes the proficiency score reports. We will also be looking at the SDE side, evidence that you have been administering alternate access to ELs who are only participating in other alternative assessments. And we will also be looking at the prior year's access participation and the access appeal sites for students that were tested and shouldn't have, or students who should have been tested and weren't. So we will be looking at the do not score codes as well. But that part will be the SDE. So that's something that I or our contractor will do. On site, you just want to ensure that those CUME files have the assessment score report. Your LEA has a written policy or procedure for verifying the students that are testing, and the list of certified access and alternative access proctors. All right, in program 44, we'll be looking at if you are funded through Title III, your paraprofessionals that are being paid through Title IIIA funds must have a paraprofessional schedule that includes where the instruction is being provided and the name of their supervisor. Paraprofessionals do a wonderful job, but they also need to be supervised by a certified staff member. So if a paraprofessional is being paid through Title III, their schedule should align to the budget and the time and effort that they are spending on the title program. So for example, if a paraprofessional is 50% general funds and 50% Title III funds, half of the paraprofessional's time should be providing that supplemental support to students. All right, the next section for Title III monitoring is the family and community engagement portion, also known as FACE. We have 3 different indicators in family and community engagement. So FACE 13 ensures that LEAs are sending notifications to parents in a language that is understandable and in a uniform format to the extent practicable. So you will want to include in this indicator copies of letters that are being sent to parents in English and other applicable languages. For example, district, school, classroom policies, procedures, newsletters, permission forms, anything that's being sent out to families that you have in a different language, you can add that document into this indicator. And you also want to add copies of interpreter confidentiality agreements if that's applicable and available. So this indicator does apply to all Title IA programs, even if there are no enrolled English learners. FACE 15 is specific to Title IIIA, and it requires that LEAs provide or strengthen and try to increase parent, family, and community engagement. So in this indicator, you would want to include evidence of outreach invitations. So you can put copies of call logs, home visits, invitations, or flyers to events going on at the school. You'll also want to have attendance sheets with the parents of English learners clearly identified. So if you have, for example, a Title I literacy night and you want to include Title III funding and you do an EL presentation in one of the rooms in this literacy night, the parents that attend the EL program, you would have them sign in, you would make sure they're highlighted so we know that they were in attendance. You're also going to want to include the meeting agenda and minutes of any events that you are holding for your EL families. FACE 16 discusses how parents, the LEA, higher education staff, and community agencies or groups participate together in developing and implementing the ELD plan. So how do you get different community members, parents, and staff to look at the English learner program and help provide feedback on how to make it better for students? So for this indicator, you're going to want to have evidence of outreach invitations. These could be emails, invitations, flyers, anything that was sent home. Then you're going to want to have a copy of the meeting agendas and minutes, and you'll want to have signed attendance sheets with the participants' names and their role or affiliation. So you'll want to have the list, and you'll put in, for example, parent, teacher, administrator, community member. We want to know who were these people that were at this meeting helping provide feedback and support for implementing and developing the ELD program. All right, so the next section that we look at is qualifications for teachers and paraprofessionals. If you are paying a teacher or a paraprofessional with Title III funds, we want to ensure that those teachers and paraprofessionals are meeting applicable state certification and licensure requirements. So you will want to have a list of all Title III paraprofessionals and note how that paraprofessional is meeting that paraprofessional requirement. And for Title III A, you'll want to ensure that you are showing the Title III A paraprofessionals. So Q1 will include Title I, 1C migrant, and Title III-A English learners. I'm going to briefly show you the indicators that may fall under Title III. And if you want more information, please review the fiscal accountability presentation that will go through each one in detail. But the following indicators will have some information on Title III if you have a Title III program. So written policies and procedures, budget and accounting systems. FA3 and FA5 talk about allowable use of funds, specifically if you're purchasing equipment, information on that. CPA audit, physical inventory. If you're buying physical inventory specific to Title III-A funds, you will have to have a document showing all of those inventories and where they're being used. Time and effort, so looking at the percentage of times paraprofessionals or instructional staff are working based on their budget percentage with Title III. And FA11 will look at records retention. Again, if you have any questions on fiscal accountability, please go ahead and listen to the fiscal accountability training, and it will go into more details on this particular subject. Again, you can also contact me if you have any questions on these particular indicators. So I just want to say thank you. That was a brief overview of the Title III-A indicators for federal programs monitoring. I know this is going to be a huge task that you're taking on, so please use this as one of your references. However, please feel free to email me or call me if you need additional support as you're going through this federal program monitoring review. We know that it's extensive. We know that it can feel stressful, but we want you to know that we're here to help you. And that our main goal is to see what amazing work you're already doing at your districts and what are the ways we can help support you to create stronger programs for all of our youth. Thank you.